So the talk of my presentation, which I will share with my colleague Sergio Vega from Madrid, is building competitions as an incentive for research, education, and communication. And the background for this talk is the Annex 74 in the EBC program. So as you can see on this slide, the Annex is already finished because it runs until June last year. And it has the input of information from a lot of international building competitions taking place, mainly the solar decathlons in Europe, but also the input from other building related annexes and tasks, and as well as the international solar decathlon community. This was input into this annex, and we structured it into work onto science and technology, into competitions and living labs, and into communication. And the output, of course, are different reports, many in publications. Many of them are already finished and published on the Annex webpage. It was a small Annex. You can see here the countries participating, but nevertheless, it was a powerful piece of work, and it was guided by Germany and Spain. We use one instrument, the so-called knowledge platform, which is a database to collect information and experience from past competitions. And this is also online available for further research. So the Annex took as a major input the experience from solar decathlons, and mainly those taking place in Europe. And this is an example from 2010, a picture showing you, let's say, an exhibition site of net zero energy solar buildings designed, built, and operated by students. Up to now, about 22 of these competitions have been done. And Katja already mentioned that the next one is the edition here in Germany for the first time, and it's in Wuppertal, so the university where I'm working with. And it takes place this week. It starts on Friday. We will have many visitors seeing the buildings and the students on the site. In general, solar decathlon means a building competition with 10 contests. They are not always exactly the same. Also, the amount of points you can receive is not always exactly the same, but in general, it's the same concept. And those teams having the highest score at the end in all of the contests will win the competition. From the perspective of research, the focus is on 3 of these contests, which are monitored. It means the energy performance of these buildings, the house functioning, and oh, something is wrong in here, the comfort. This is wrong in my slide. It's a comfort and not a and viability. But generally, 3 contests are monitored. So to work with all these data from past competitions, I already mentioned we designed a sharing platform where all the data from past competitions are stored, and researchers can look into this database and use the data for analysis. And also it secures for the next editions, for example, the one in Wuppertal, that the information is still available when the organizers do not anymore work with their own internet platform. As I mentioned, the one in Wuppertal is under construction. It looks like this. You see some of the buildings under construction, almost ready now, and we start on Friday this week. So basically, I will focus on the topic of research, and Sergio will talk about education and communication potential within these competitions. There are many aspects where you can do research on. This might be architecture, construction, energy engineering, HVAC equipment, or controls. Just select for this presentation just two, namely construction and energy engineering. For example, the buildings, due to this small amount of time to construct them on the site, are all prefabricated. They use different levels of prefabrication. And we also see in the European building market that the tendency for prefabrication is rising. So we have more and more buildings with a high level of prefabrication, starting from building with prefabricated elements or even using prefabricated space modules. Therefore, this competition is also about designing, testing, and inspiring the market with these kinds of buildings. If you take a look in past competitions and see from the different approaches here, building by elements, building by modules, or hybrid constructions, you can see that teams use different approaches. And one very important approach was here, the Lumen House from Virginia Tech in 2010. It was a winner of that competition, and also because the level of prefabrication was enormous. It was just built in or transported to the site with one truck. So one module was 10 by 3.2 by 3 meter, and all the other buildings use much more modules or even more elements. So typical number of trucks when teams set up these kind of houses are something like 5 to 10 trucks, and this house comes with one truck and was almost ready and placed on the site. So we can learn how pre-construction can be successful done and how it influences the performance of buildings. If you take a look into the strategies used in past competitions from 2010 to 2019, you can see it's not the case that more and more buildings use the module construction. It's going down or here going up a bit, most of them using elements. And this has to do mainly with the limitations in the architectural design of these buildings when you build with modules. And this is something to overcome when we want to be successful in future with modular buildings in the market, to overcome the design limitations and look for more options in this, and then we can start to use more module-based designs. Another issue of research in these competitions is, of course, the energy engineering and the energy balance of these. All these houses are designed for net zero energy buildings or even net positive energy, and all use electricity as the only energy carrier. This is, let's say, not 100% representing the market, because we have different energy carriers in different houses, especially in the urban situation. We have district heating, cooling, things like that. But for the limitation of a common event on a common site, electricity is the only energy source. We have done a powerful review of energy engineering in past competitions. It was published in last autumn in Energy and Buildings, and you can download it as an open source publication on the website of Energy and Buildings. Just to explain how energy performance is analyzed in these competitions, I can show you an example on the energy intensity of the different houses. Houses are here given with their abbreviations, and here the average of all houses for the competition in Dubai and Middle East in 2018, and here for the one in Europe, in France in 2014. And what you can pick from this figure is that due to the different locations, of course, the energy intensity is quite different, namely with regards to HVAC installations here in Dubai, of course, for cooling, and here in France for a competition in June, there's not much cooling needed. But on the other hand, we also need energy for appliances, which is also a bit different in the competition in Dubai and the one in France. Solar systems are mandatory in this competition, namely the PV installations. And from the history of the competition, you can see here from European editions in 2010 to 2019, the installed power per living area is decreasing. And I can say this has to do, let's say, in the early times of the competition, it was more, or it should more address solar energy utilization in buildings and should more put this in front. And now it's more addressing the overall energy balance with increased efficiency and trying to overcome the energy needs by solar systems. That means the organizers of the competitions, they have limited the amount of PV installed on these buildings. And currently it's something like 30 to 40 watt per square meter. And this is somewhat similar to typical residential applications you, for example, find in Germany in residential buildings built according to the standard of net zero energy positive buildings. I already mentioned that these houses should have a positive energy balance, and this is, you can see this on the competition here in 2010 in Madrid. The relation between consumption and the generation in the competition period of about 2 weeks. You can see that was more or less an easy job in Madrid in that time because of the large size of the PV systems. And you can see here in Versailles in 2014, because of the limitations of the sizes of the PV system, not all houses were successful. Here you can see some which have been not successful. And also a new topic arises with an advanced monitoring approach. This was the balance between feed-in and consumption, allowing you also to analyze the self-consumption of these buildings. That also shows that the monitoring approach for these competitions was not always the same. It has developed over time, and the focus also has shifted a bit. Of course, the solar systems are very interesting in terms of pilot applications. Here you can see some pictures I took last week in Wuppertal on the construction site. We see many buildings using hybrid solar systems, PVT, photovoltaic thermal combinations. We see new approaches like these ones here, PV tubes, or design solutions where you have a copper roof, a ready-made copper roof for a building with copper-colored PVT systems. So there are many things like this to see when you visit a solar Decathlon. The problem is that up to now there was no system analysis possible based on monitored data. And this is always a question of how much money you can spend for monitoring for 2 weeks in such a competition. And it's something also which has developed over time, but it really has limitation what you can measure in such a competition when buildings are only placed for 2 weeks. From this perspective, there are some conclusions and outlooks based on what we have done in the Annex 74. So we have found out that we need a bit more sophisticated and more systematic monitoring approach and information collection from the competitions to allow for past competition research. There's a platform which was developed within the Annex, and hopefully this platform now allows to better structure the information received from the competitions. On the right side, you see a picture of a typical Excel page of such a platform, and hopefully the information is now better structured for past competition analysis. Also, based on the Annex 74 research, we introduced new contests into the competition. For example, we have now, just this week, they took place. We start sequences for co-heating tests of the buildings. And next week, we will also start with performance ratio measurement of the PV system. And we also will make a more deeper look in the building grid interaction. So this was a direct outcome on the work with the colleagues together in the Annex and discussing research possibilities. And by using things like the co-heating test, we might in future better understand the results during the competition weeks and better address the performance gap between design and operation. Research in the competition doesn't mean everything has to take place in these 2 weeks. We found out that many teams start with research when the buildings are back home. This example is one from our contribution in 2010 in Madrid. We operated this house as a residential building here back in Wuppertal, and you can see here the energy consumption and generation over a period for 1 year of operation here in Wuppertal. And like we in Wuppertal, many teams use these houses when transported back to the campus or other test sites. The colleague from Spain, Karsten from Barcelona, he has specially analyzed the use of these houses when back at the home university for educational purposes. That means they have established, for example, in Delft or in Barcelona, living labs on the campus where they work with students using monitored data or, let's say, test occupation of these houses, or they analyze the installed systems. So this is something which is investigated within the Annex. Karsten has also written a report on that, a focus report for after competition and living lab scenarios. This is also, or this will be available on the webpage, is under review right now. What we also have done is in the Annex to take a look into other tasks and annexes running, make small topical papers about the outcome and making it useful for future student teams in such competitions. And this is also collected into a focus report. We call it topical papers. And here you see the different topics we addressed. This information is available and will also be, or is already available on the Annex webpage. So at this point, I like to hand over to my colleague, Sergio Vega, the cooperation agent of this Annex, and hope that Sergio is ready for his presentation.